Since a mountain is symbolic of government, making the high mountains low is a metaphor for invisible government or abusive government and elite abusers being made low. When we take our abusers down, the redistribution of wealth restores sustainability. This is part of God's form of socialism, also known as the law of consecration in LDS circles. And when they tried to live the law of concentration without this, it's one of the reasons it didn't work. Another popular form of abuse today is just being too lazy, and lazy people drag the rest of the group down with them, like the dead weight of society. In the kingdom of God that's manifesting, God's not going to be helping people that are not willing to make positive choices for themselves. Some people are just unwilling to make healthy choices, period. And under the leadership of Brigham Young, he tried to enact the law of consecration for the LDS Church. But without integration of the covenant of the Book of Mormon, which wasn't to read it, the people back then didn't even have it to read, but it was the strict law of peace, as in Alma chapter 1, verse 1 and 21, the title of liberty, as in Alma chapter 46, verse 4, Alma chapter 51, verse 1, or standard of liberty, as in Alma chapter 62, verse 2. Brigham Young didn't have all the laws of empowerment, just like all our other world leaders. His plan was missing some elements. Instead of doing the right thing with the abusers in the country, instead of bringing the high mountains down, the invisible abusers, and redistributing that wealth to the least of them, who are also at least willing to make healthy choices in their life and help bring them up, help eliminate the status quo of what the abusers want to maintain, the slaves. Instead of doing that, his version of the law of consecration was, let's just require everybody to give everything they produce to the church, and the church will take care of their basic needs. My own father made the same mistake within his ministry, which destroys the motivation in people. I know because I've seen it up close. They had no motivation to thrive, no real hope of thriving. So, two big reasons for past failure. Our future simply has no place for abusers of any kind. There was no way to reward positive behavior, which breaks some of the major rules. Those saints may have been guinea pigs, but we have all sort of been guinea pigs, experimenting and learning from our mistakes, from trial and error sometimes. At least we can learn from the past. My own father made the same exact mistake because he didn't understand it all yet either. And we've been warned that when people have an opportunity to end up in leadership in a big organization, and even when they're studying the principles to the best of their ability, how it can go to their head. That's one lesson I hope I've learned from looking at what other people have done. I do believe that God knew who would become leaders of churches, just as other world leaders were known, just as the sons of Israel were each blessed to become leaders of different tribes, and that we've had various levels of duality with our leaders and our prophets, much like the blessings given to the sons of Israel. And I don't think there's been a president quite like George Washington. Neither has there been a president of the LDS Church with quite the same level as Joseph Smith. They go out of their way to try to convince people that every other president of the church was just as empowered as Joseph Smith and had just as much of a gift and power of that particular position, somehow, miraculously. Even though that is inaccurate. It was after Joseph Smith died they decided on how they would elect successors. I'm sure God knew what they would do, but he also knew that some would choose another path. They decided to follow the pattern they have today, where they're just lined up by how long they've been an apostle. It does provide a system of order. I guess that's one way of creating some kind of order. In ancient times, it was all about the firstborn. The popular attitude of, I'm older or I have more seniority because of how long I've been sitting here, even though they may have just been sitting there on their butt. Sort of like squatters' rights. That's kind of a typical thought pattern of some abusers, actually, who like to step on the grandstand and have all the attention in the world. Why? Because they're older, or they're a man, or whatever weak reason. Look at Joseph of Israel. Just like Joseph, who was sold as a slave into Egypt, Joseph Smith wasn't the oldest in his family. But anyway, I wish he would have personally selected a successor. That may have solved a lot of issues, but maybe not. Because who's going to be as good as him? Good luck. The best thing the church could do is realize and tell the truth. Say, look, if we were exactly like Joseph Smith, you'd see us doing more of the stuff he did. We'd be coming out and saying, this is what God said about you, and this and that, and what we need to do right now today. I do realize it may not be their job to do any more than they have. It may not be their job to comment on the many controversial issues. I do think churches have been neutered by government in many aspects. Churches in the United States are overregulated by government when it comes to politics. There are certain things they've agreed to be sterile with, which they can't perform. Most of them have agreed by their passive submission. I hope this inspires greater courage.